Okay, and welcome back, students who are taking financial accounting. We were working on the Chapter 2 exercises, Group B, and in the previous video, Part 1, we were working on the problem E-27B. Let me get there, okay? And in the previous problem, we got all the way up to Part 3 here, which was to calculate the balance of each account at December 31st, 2014, but because it was 28 minutes long, I decided to make this two parts, so we're picking up right where we left off, all right? So part 4 here, requirement 4 says prove that the total of the debit balances equals the total of the credit balances by preparing a trial balance, all right? Now, I'm actually going to insert a slide here. Go home, slide, blank. Okay, so I just inserted a slide so that I can create a trial balance. Okay, so let me jump up here. Okay, so as a quick recap, we started with our beginning balances in our ledger accounts here. Okay, then we journalized our journal entries. That's what's down the left-hand side here in red. We have those journal entries. We created from this information right here. And then we had to post those journal entries into those ledger accounts. And what I did was I recreated the journal entries down the side and across the bottom here. And we posted the information into those T accounts, those ledger accounts. And then part 3 was we had to figure out the balances in the accounts, and we need to do that in order to create our trial balance. So in creating our trial balance, the name of this company is Going Green. So I'm going to just abbreviate Going Green Inc., right? And I'm going to put T/B for trial balance. Now remember, you need to write all of this stuff out, all right, if you're presenting it formally, but I'm doing this as if it was homework, and I know that T/B means that, it's like a trial balance, but if this was a requirement for me to submit as part of an exam, I would have written out Going Green, comma, INC period, and then I'd write out the words trial balance, right? Because I'm giving this information to somebody else. So it's dated December 31, 2014, and I would have written out December. Center aligned, okay. And I have my choice to include the account numbers if I want or not, okay. In this case here, the solution, I would normally put in the account numbers. I would do it, but the solution doesn't have it, and it's not wrong, so I'm just going to not include them. Okay, so account, and then I have a debit column, and I have a credit column. All right, so my accounts, I have cash, and I had accounts receivable, and I had supplies, and I had office furniture, and I had building. Remember, you'd write these out. I'm only abbreviating because it's my homework. Okay, accounts payable, notes payable, common stock, service revenue, and rent expense. And of course, I'm going to have a total of all of my accounts, of my debits, and a total of all of my credits. All right, so this is the listing. Remember, trial balance is nothing more than a listing of your ledger accounts. And if I didn't do anything more, this would, instead of having a trial balance here, this would actually be a chart of accounts. But on the chart of accounts, I would include the account numbers, okay? All right, so that's why I like to include account numbers. The author of the book doesn't do it, But you know, if our trial balance is a listing of the accounts, so basically it's the chart of accounts and the balances in the account. So all I do is just erase that and make this a trial balance. Now all I have to do is just add in the balances. Okay, so that's why I like putting in the account numbers, and it also makes for easier reference. I don't have to go from a trial balance and then look at a chart of accounts in order to see the account numbers so that I can go into that ledger account. And because remember, you're going to have this big book and you're going to have to be flipping through account numbers. Okay, I won't have to be trying to find the number so I can go into the book to look it up. I'd already have it here. I mean, if I create a chart of accounts, why not just keep that information, right? So now we take and we put our balances in. So from our cash account, we figured our balance for the cash account is $72.50. For the receivable, it was a debit for $23.40. For supplies, it was a debit of $6.75. Office furniture, $3,100. For building, it was $42,000. For accounts payable, it's $725. For the notes payable, $15,000. For common stock, $35,000. Service revenue was $78.40. And for our rent expense, it's a debit of $3,200. Notice the accounts payable is a credit, notes payable is a credit, common stock is a credit, and service revenue is a credit. But the rent expense is a debit of $32.50. So I add those amounts to my trial balance. And of course, the first number in the column gets the dollar sign to designate it's the dollar amount, not a decimal amount. So for my cash, I had $72.50. For my accounts receivable, I had $2,340. For supplies, I had $675. For office furniture, I had $3,100. And for for building, I have $42,000. Now for accounts payable, that's a credit. So in the credit column, since it's the first number, I put a dollar sign, and that amount was $725. My notes payable was $15,000. My common stock was $35,000. My service revenue was $7,840. And my rent expense was a debit of $3,200. So I put that in the debit column. And of course, I draw an underline, which represents a mathematical calculation, and my total, will get a double underline because that'll be the end of the calculation. And of course, I have to put a dollar sign there to represent dollars. So now when I add up all of these numbers, I should get 58,565. When I add up these four numbers, I should get 58,565. And my debits equal my credits here. So I know I've proved and I know that that the debits do equal the credits, and that my books are balanced. Now, if you were recall in the previous video, I had gone and now this is okay. So before I go there, okay, so that here's my trial balance, and even though it's in abbreviated format, the formatting of columns and everything, and center alignments, and two columns and indentations and things like that are all correct. The only thing I didn't do was, I abbreviate it when I should be writing things out. And so that ends the working of this problem. However, in the last video, as you will recall, for this notes payable, okay, what had happened was I had 17,500, and when I posted this notes payable here for 2,500, I inadvertently wrote it on the credit side. Okay, so if I hadn't been thinking about it, okay, I would have gone and figured out that my balance here would have been 20,000 instead of the 15,000. Okay, now let's assume that we don't see this and that this is the actual work I had done where I had made the $20,000 error. I made the error and it was 20,000. So if I'm coming over and I'm creating my trial balance, instead of having a note payable here of 15,000, okay, I would have written in 20,000. Okay. Now we know that's wrong, okay, but I'm making this as a point. When I add up the 725 and the 20,000, 35,000, and 7,840, I end up with, okay, so 20 and 35 is 55,000, and then 7,840 means I have 62,840, and 725 to that is 5, 6, 16, 3. So I would have ended up with 63,665. Okay, and I know, obviously that's not right because my debits don't equal my credits. They need to, debits have to equal credits, and because they're not, oh, I've made a mistake somewhere. Okay, so I know that I have to go back and look through my work in order to be able to find where my mistake was. Okay, and I don't have many transactions and things, so I can do a lot of eyeballing here. Okay, I'm looking down, I can see that my journal entries are all right. Okay, that my debits equal my credits on my journal entries. Right? Well, then I need to next start looking over, and this becomes the tedious part. Did I make the proper posting from the journal account to the ledger accounts? And so I'd be looking and saying, okay, I have a debit for 1,600. That's that. I have a credit to 1,600. That's that. I have a debit to rent expense over here for 1,600. That's that. And I'd have to go down through each and every one of these entries. Okay, here's a debit to cash for 900. Okay, that's right. My service revenue, 900. That's right. Okay, and I, continue on down, and what would end up happening is I get down to this here notes payable. Okay, and I'd see, oh, I have a debit to notes payable for 2,500. But when I look at this notes payable account, I would have saw that I wrote it in the credit column. There's my mistake. Okay, and finding that mistake, then what I would need to do is I would need to correct it. Okay, and when I corrected it, it should look like this, which is what it's supposed to be. Okay, and now that I know that my notes payable is 15,000 instead of 20,000, I would then have to come over to my trial balance, okay, and write in the 15,000. And because now when I do the math, I actually end up with 58,565. Okay, and I see that my debits equal my credits, and I found my mistake, corrected it, and brought my books into balance. Okay, so with that problem, I realized that was a little long, but like I had said in the beginning of the previous part to this video, two videos, that this makes up, doing this process makes up 2/3 of your graded project that you'll have to do at the end of chapter 3. So make sure you go through here, and to be honest with you, the graded project is really not more complicated than this. Okay, so if you have a good understanding and a good grasp of this, you should be well on your way to doing well on the graded project. You start out with a trial balance, you create your ledger accounts, you make journal entries, you post them, you get the balances in the accounts, and then you create a trial balance. Now from here, you would end up making any adjustments or correcting entries, and that's all part of what you're going to learn in the next chapter, in chapter 3. Right? That's why this only takes up 2/3 of that project, because you still have to learn how to make adjusting entries and correcting entries, and then you have to create your financial statements and close out your books. Okay, but again, that's all part of chapter 3, right? Beyond what we're doing here. But realize that up to this point in time, you've gone through the work. Students will get to this point and have a mistake, okay, here where their debits don't equal credits, and then they'll call up or they'll email and saying, oh, I have a mistake. Well, again, only you can correct that mistake, and you correct it by going back through it. Okay. Now, as an FYI, in the Introduction to Accounting and Bookkeeping videos under the business group on the student community, there is a written instruction and some videos that explain what to do when your debits don't equal your credits. Okay, you can follow that step-by-step process in order to circumvent or shortcut your finding the error. Okay, but as you saw here, when I had made that error, because I have so much experience, I realized that I had written the credit on the wrong side. It belonged on the debit side. Everybody makes mistakes, okay? But through experience, you're able to pick these things up, and that's what I saw. I saw that mistake, so I was able to circumvent it even before I got to the end of the process, right? But if I hadn't, as you saw in this video, I took a little bit of extra time to show you kind of like what you need to do to go back and find your mistake and how to go about correcting it, okay? When the books get a little bit more complicated, like I said, there's that process in the Introduction to Accounting and Bookkeeping videos that'll help you through the more complicated process by actually making copies of your work, keeping your originals on the side, and working through the copies. What you don't want to do is you don't want to work on your originals, because if you start messing with those, you find a mistake here. What if you have more than one mistake? And you'll become easily lost. And then if you become so lost, you're going to have to start the project all over again. So you keep your originals on the side and work off of copies. But you'll see that in those videos. Okay, so that's the end of this problem, and I will see you all for 2-28 in the next problem, in the next video.